I think we're all right. We've started recording. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, where we'll be reviewing the updated New York Sun operating plan, new capacity blocks, and other items. We could advance to the next slide, please. So we have some important housekeeping items here. The webinar is being recorded. A copy of the recording and the presentation will be made available on the New York Sun Resources for Contractors page. We will also be sending around an email reminding people when that is available and including the links. Everyone is muted right now, but we do have a question and answer session at the end. Please submit your questions using the Q&A feature. As noted here, click the three dots on the lower right-hand corner and select the Slido option. What we'll do at the end of the presentation is pause for a minute and then come back and begin reviewing the questions and answers. Please contact Dylan Cunningham at this email address if you start experiencing any technical problems during the webinar. And just once again, as people continue to come in, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the New York Sun webpage. Next slide, please. So before we get into the agenda, I wanted to offer a few words of welcome. I'll start by introducing myself. This is Max Joel. I'm the director of the New York Sun program at NYSERDA. I'll be joined today on the webinar by my colleagues Luke Forrester and Sarah Jayanthi, and I have a number of my NYSERDA colleagues here online or in the room to help address questions at the end. Before we really get down to business and start reviewing the agenda and the materials, I did just want to acknowledge that we're facing some really challenging times in the solar industry right now. We'll be touching on some of those in this presentation and some of the steps NYSERDA will be taking on a program level. But I know for many of you on the webinar today, you're very aware of all the headwinds that your companies, your organizations are facing. But I also do want to take the opportunity to just recognize the impact that the solar industry, the distributed solar technology, and the New York Sun program have had on New York to date. As I think most of you know, we are ahead of schedule on our 6 gigawatt goal and 10 gigawatt goal in the state of New York. For those of you who watched the NYSO dashboard, I think even this afternoon, we're seeing the real impact of everything that so many people who are on this webinar, who have been working in this industry for years and years, have accomplished. Just look at that dashboard, look at what it's shown in the other heat waves this summer. The distributed solar portfolio is really helping keep the lights on and doing its part to keep energy affordable. So I just wanted to share my appreciation, my colleagues' appreciation for all of the work that all of you have done to get us here today. So now getting down to business, what we'll be covering today is first the April order that approved some of the program modifications we'll be reviewing in detail. We will touch on the impact of the federal policy changes. Then my colleague Luke Forster will be reviewing some details on the status of the New York Sun incentives and the megawatt block incentives. Then we'll really get into some of the details on the SEEF blocks, the Solar Energy Equity Framework blocks, which are the new capacity blocks that NYSERDA will be releasing. Then I'll hand it over to my colleague Sarah Jayanthi to talk through some of the changes in streamlining that we're exploring for the Inclusive Community Solar Adder, the ICSA. And then finally, I'll close with some additional items and updates before we get into Q&A. Next slide, please. So the April 2025 Public Service Commission order was issued in response to NYSERDA projecting a budget surplus for the New York Sun program. We are ahead of schedule and under budget on achieving the state's distributed solar goals. One of the key new items in the order was the authorization of $150 million of that projected budget surplus for up to 500 megawatts of additional statewide solar for all capacity over and above the 10 gigawatt goal. Statewide Solar for All, of course, as many on the webinar are aware, is a New York State program, not to be confused with the federal Environmental Protection Agency Solar for All program. Statewide Solar for All is a state community solar program supporting low-income households. NYSERDA has since recently filed a revised operating plan that shares some of the details of how we will implement the order. And those are the exact details we'll be going over today. High level, the order and our operating plan describe how the megawatt block incentives that were previously approved will continue to be offered. As the program phases out those incentives as planned and as designed, the adder incentives will remain available as we still have capacity in those megawatt blocks. So that represents a point of consistency in the program. Then, and this is one of the really most important changes we'll be discussing today, as the final megawatt blocks in each region or sector closes, projects will continue to be able to receive the Solar Energy Equity Framework incentives. Those are the SEAF incentives. That's our general category for the Affordable Solar Residential Incentive, the Multifamily Affordable Housing Incentive, the Inclusive Community Solar Adder, the ICSA, and the Statewide Solar for All Adder. So these are all the programs that benefit low-income households, disadvantaged communities, and affordable housing properties. And we'll be accomplishing that through new capacity blocks. These are the SEAF blocks that I mentioned before, and we'll break down in detail as the presentation progresses. Next slide, please. So before we get into some of the details of what we're doing on the state side, our operating plan did include a breakdown of some of the very serious federal policy changes that I'm sure everyone on this webinar is well aware of. So I won't take the time to really run through any of the details of the Federal Reconciliation Act as it concerns the investment tax credit, foreign entities of concern. As we acknowledge, there's also potential tariffs and other trade policy changes. The point here is that the incentive rates, capacity projections, and other details that we've included in our operating plan and in the capacity blocks that we're preparing to release are all based on the full assumption of full tax credit and sort of status quo costs. We totally recognize that that is by no means something that can be taken for granted, that there's additional federal guidance on safe harboring, additional uncertainties around compliance with the FEOC requirements, uncertainties related to other costs, tariffs. So NYSERDA's plan is to stay very aware of those changes and incorporate new information as we get it and all of you get it into our analysis and planning. As we get a more complete picture, we will be working with our counterparts at Department of Public Service and all of you, our program stakeholders, to adapt the New York Sun program design to the maximum extent possible. Next slide, please. So here I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Luke Forrester, who will provide a review of the current status of the New York Sun incentives across the different program sectors.
Max, thank you for the introduction. This is Luke Forrester at NYSERDA. I'm an analyst supporting the New York Sun Solar program, as well as NYSERDA's energy storage programs. As Max said, I'm going to give an update on where we currently stand with each of the block structures, And I'll also sprinkle in some updates about the new SEEF blocks that Max mentioned. Residential solar. The standard offer megawatt block has been phased out in Con Edison and Long Island. The Upstate residential block is currently open on block 13. That block is open to customers of National Grid, NYSEG, RG&E, Central Hudson, and Orange and Rockland. That block is winding down. There will be an additional block, block 14, following block 13. That will be open for customers of National Grid, NYSEG, and RG&E only. If you take a look at the dashboard, you'll see that we've already launched a new Con Edison residential SEEF block. That is for Con Ed customers that qualify for the affordable solar residential incentive only. That is currently 80 cents a watt. Green Jobs, Green New York financing is still available. Term loans up to $25,000. That will still be available for projects that do not receive a New York Sun incentive. Additionally, the residential battery storage program is now available. Let's do next slide. Let's move to non-residential solar. The Upstate non-residential block is open. It is on its final block. That has been open for a while and it's been moving a bit slowly. The Con Edison non-residential blocks are still open. We currently have 2 blocks, one for all projects under 1 megawatt DC, the other block for projects over 1 megawatt AC. There is a bit more capacity that we have not yet posted to Con Edison non-res. We'll post that in the future as those blocks wind down. The incentive adders are still available for eligible non-residential projects, including the prevailing wage adder for projects above a megawatt, the beneficial siting adder, which includes projects located on brownfields, landfills, as well as floating projects. We've received a couple of those. We still have the parking canopy and rooftop canopy adder for projects in Con Edison territory. Finally, we have the multifamily affordable housing incentive, sometimes referred to as MAHI. That's available for non-residential projects upstate, downstate, and on Long Island. And in this market segment as well, the retail battery storage incentives are now available. Next slide, please. Okay, here's the big one, commercial industrial solar. As most of us are aware, Block 21 of the Upstate Commercial Industrial Program was fully subscribed as of this April and has been closed since. NYSERDA will open an additional new Upstate Commercial Industrial SEEF Block 1 for community solar projects that serve LMI households. That includes both inclusive community solar adder projects, as well as projects going through the statewide Solar for All program. So to reiterate, that new block will be open for ICSA and SSFA projects. There will not be a commercial industrial incentive for market rate community solar or projects that do not serve LMI community solar off-takers. Projects in the new SEEF block will be eligible to receive other incentive adders, such as the prevailing wage adder and the beneficial siting adders. And there will be a fixed base incentive set at 12 cents per watt DC. I've got a visual on the next slide. I'll walk through how that incentive stacks up. But as a reminder, the value of distributed DER or VEDER program remains open. Statewide Solar for All remains open as well, so there are no changes to the utility tariffs. Next slide, please. And if you take a look at the operating plan, you'll see a table like this. This is a listing of the intended new SEEF blocks. As a reminder, SEEF stands for Solar Energy Equity Framework, which is an umbrella term for New York Sun's LMI and affordable solar programs. You'll see we're rolling out Upstate Commercial Industrial SEEF Block 1. That'll be 400 megawatts, 12 cent per watt base incentive plus adders. We anticipate there will be an additional 400 megawatt block after that. Details on incentive are to be determined. We're going to take a look at market conditions and federal policy before announcing that incentive rate. There will be the Upstate Residential SEEF block for residential projects. We're going to start that at 5 megawatts at 80 cents a watt, which is the current affordable solar residential rate. Once the Con Ed non-residential block closes, there will be a Con Ed multifamily affordable housing block 1. That'll be 20 megawatts, and that will have the same different incentive rates that are currently in play now for multifamily affordable projects. There will be a Con Ed non-residential SEEF Block 1. That will be, for instance, for ICSA and Statewide Solar for All projects and Con Ed. That's not open yet. We're going to wait until the existing Con Ed non-residential blocks wind down first. Finally, last item here, the Con Ed residential SEEF block is currently open. That was 5 megawatts at 80 cents per watt. As a reminder, these slides will be posted. This table will be made available, and this information is also available in the recently filed operating plan. Next slide, please. And let's take a look at an example project here. So here we're digging into an upstate commercial industrial statewide solar for all project. And you'll see on the table, on the graph to the right, we have 2 stacked bar graphs. The first is the incentive a project would have received under Block 21. It's labeled Old Program Design. You'll see there was that 5 cent per watt base incentive, the dark blue. There was the 7 cent per watt SSFA adder, that medium blue. The prevailing wage adder, 12.5 cents per watt. And maybe the project got beneficial siting if it was on a brownfield or a landfill, or floating. So under the new program design, SEEF Block 1, you'll see that the total incentive stack adds up to the same amount. Instead of doing a 5 cent base and 7 cent SSFA adder, we're just saying it's a 12 cent SEEF base, essentially. Projects are eligible for the same prevailing wage adder and the same beneficial siting adders. So the total amounts of the new block are going to be comparable and equivalent to that of Block 21. Let's move on to the next slide. And you'll see it's a similar comparison for an inclusive community solar adder project. The total incentive amounts are equivalent between Block 21 and between the new ICSA program, the new SEEF block. There will be a base rate of 12 cents per watt, which represents the 5 cent per watt base rate from Block 21, plus the 7 cent per watt ICSA fixed incentive. Please remember that ICSA projects receive a fixed incentive as well as potentially a variable incentive of 10 cents a watt based on what percent of the project goes to eligible LMI households. That 10 cent per watt performance-based adder is still there. And again, you'll see it's the same prevailing wage adder and the same beneficial siting adder, depending on if the project is sited in such a way that it qualifies for that. Boiling the last 2 slides down to a single sentence, the total incentive stack for ICSA and statewide solar for all projects is equivalent between old Block 21, which closed in April, and the new SEEF Block 1, which will open in the near future. Let's move on to the next slide, please. And I believe we're going to transition over to Max to walk through some details of how to submit applications for these new incentives. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. So in a similar vein to Luke's summation, the application process for the new Upstate Commercial Industrial SEAF block will be very, very similar to what developers are used to and what they've seen in the past with the previous blocks. What we've done on this slide is detail the application paths for SSFA projects and ICSA projects. But again, in most, almost all aspects of these processes are the same as what was the case with previous blocks. So just to run through them, step one will always be submitting a New York Sun CNI application. This is initiated through the New York Sun portal in the exact same way that you would have submitted an application to Block 21 or previously. A change you'll see will be on the adder incentive page in the application. You'll be required to select either the SSFA or the ICSA option. The application will not allow you to move forward without selecting one of those two options, because of course that is now a requirement to receive any incentive funding in the new block. If the SSFA adder checkbox is selected, the process is identical to what is currently in place for projects seeking the SSFA adder. You'll be required to upload the utility enrollment confirmation for Statewide Solar for All from the relevant utility. And at that point, NYSERDA will review the application. If you will be seeking the ICSA, the only difference at this point is checking that ICSA checkbox, indicating to us that you plan to pursue the ICSA for the project. However, at this time of initial New York Sun application, you do not need to upload anything related to the ICSA because, as those of you who have gone through the ICSA process are aware, there is a separate later application specifically for the ICSA, which I'll describe in just a moment. But continuing through this process, step two, when NYSERDA conducts its review of the applications, if this is an SSFA project, the New York Sun Award will include the prevailing wage adder, any beneficial siting adders the project may be eligible for. And I should say, of course, that will include the prevailing wage adder if the project is 1 megawatt AC or greater. And it will also include the SSFA adder. So as Luke described, the total incentive amount will be the same as a Block 21 project in that instance. And all those funds will, just as with the prior blocks, be included in that single award. On the ICSA side of things, again, this is the really the same as the existing process. The New York Sun Award that will be received through that initial application will include the prevailing wage adder, any beneficial siting adders, brownfield, landfill, floating PV that the project may be eligible for. That award, those amounts will be included in the award letter. And after that first approval, the project must submit a separate ICSA application to receive the ICSA award. Just to keep on emphasizing, that is the current process. And that is the process we will be maintaining. The ICSA will involve two separate awards and contracts. However, I'll note here that on the next slide, my colleague Sarah Jayanthi will be talking about some steps we are looking at to make that whole process easier and faster. Moving on to project invoicing. Of course, there's a lot in between the project application and approval and invoicing, construction, the years of finishing development. But when a project is finished, again, just to emphasize, the entire New York Sun incentive stack, including prevailing wage and any beneficial siting adders, is contingent on the final project being either an SSFA or ICSA. That is a fundamental requirement of the new SEIF block per the Public Service Commission order. At time of invoicing for SSFA, the process will, again, look like just how it would proceed with the prior block. We will review all the documentation related to the project completion, PTO, as well as utility confirmation that the project is enrolled in SSFA before paying the invoice. On the ICSA side, likewise, the entire New York Sun incentive is contingent on meeting the ICSA requirements. So there will, just as we have now, be two separate invoices. When a commercial operation invoice is submitted, we will confirm as quickly as possible that the minimum ICSA requirements have been met to pay that invoice. We will then also be reviewing a separate ICSA invoice that will include the ICSA fixed and performance incentives, which Luke showed in the previous slide. That ICSA payout structure will follow the current process, one commercial operation payment followed by two annual payments. I'll pause and note that this entire process is, of course, much more complex. We have multiple pages in our program manual dedicated to it, as well as application guides for contractors and their staff doing the entry. I'll acknowledge that for those of you on this webinar who may not have submitted a New York Sun application before, or even may not have specifically submitted an SSFA or ICSA application, I'm sure you are walking away from this slide with a number of questions. Please feel free to enter them in the Q&A. We will seek to address them, but I would also direct you to the contractor resources section of the New York Sun website, which includes all those step-by-step guides and further information. Just to close on the same point that Luke made, really the main takeaway is that almost everything is remaining the same for those projects, provided that they, of course, meet either the SSFA or ICSA requirements. Now, to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about some of the adjustments we're looking at for those ICSA requirements, I will turn it over in just a second to Sarah Jayanthi. Next slide, please.
Thank you very much, Max. Hey everyone, this is Sarah Jayanthi from the New York Sun team. Our team has been very busy this summer developing what I think will be some well-received updates to the ICSA application and awarding process. We think that these updates will streamline the process and better line up with project development timelines. Thank you to everybody in the industry who has been talking to us through interviews to kind of help us frame out these ideas. For example, we are considering decoupling the acquisition strategy review from project applications, reducing the amount of detail required at the time of incentive application for the developer. So project applications could identify which pre-screen CA provider they will use, and there needs to be less detail then on that project level acquisition strategy. Note that nothing is changing for now, and we are just giving you a preview. Current rules still apply until the changes are finalized in the revised program manual. Just like the idea that I mentioned and others will be shared via draft rules in the fall, and our stakeholders will be given an opportunity to provide feedback before we implement. I just wanted to take a moment to give you that preview of what's to come for the ICSA. Stay tuned when we're going to be releasing the draft process changes in the fall, and can't wait to hear about everybody's feedback. So with that, I will hand it back to Max.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Next slide, please.
Thank you. So high-level timeline. As a reminder, the Con Edison residential SEIF Block 1 or Affordable Solar Block 1 is already live and accepting applications. As noted, once the current Upstate megawatt block for residential projects closes, we will open an Upstate residential SEIF Block 1. We have already filed our New York Sun operating plan. A next step for us is updating all of our other program documentation that many folks on this call are familiar with, our program manual, as well as the step-by-step guides, other documentation. We anticipate releasing all of that by September, and then we will open the Upstate CNI Block 1 to new applications. Throughout this process, we'll be providing updates via email announcements to the solar announcements listserv where this webinar was announced. So please, make sure that you are enrolled in those email announcements so that you can see information from us about the more specific timing of the opening of the new block. Next slide, please. So closing things out before we get into Q&A, just a few sort of related additional items that didn't fit neatly into other slides. Throughout the New York Sun program, providing open data and transparency has been a real focus. That's the role of the New York Sun dashboards. That will not change. We'll be updating the New York Sun dashboards to include all this information, include the CEF block dashboards. One thing to note is that the current ICSA dashboard will be removed, and at the same time, the Upstate Commercial Industrial CEF Block 1 dashboard will be added. Just anticipating a question related to that, projects that currently have New York Sun awards from Block 21 or previous can continue to apply for the ICSA. Those applications will not reduce capacity in CEF Block 1. They will just take on ICSA awards per the existing process. So that is still an option for those projects. Jumping back up a little bit, we will be describing in our program manuals the option for CEF Block 1s to make a single switch between ICSA and SSFA while in approved status. So if, for example, when an application is submitted, if the project developer feels that they'll be, participating in ICSA and later decides to make it an SSFA project, we will allow a single switch. I'll emphasize there that is subject to those switches meeting all the utility requirements for when and how those changes in project status are made. So please refer to your utility tariffs and guidance on, for example, how to switch to SSFA or to switch out of SSFA. Now, all that said, we really strongly encourage developers to take care of all their adjustments to New York Sun applications at once, particularly when you're assigning to a different owner. And we have a lot of resources on our contractor resource page about how the contract assignment process works, how the modification process works. We really want to work with the industry to keep things running smoothly, but are experiencing a lot of slowdowns in our process as we get incomplete assignments, paperwork put in, incomplete modification paperwork put in. So yeah, just to emphasize here, both if you find yourself switching up your project, but just in general, please review the information on our contractor resources page to keep everything running smoothly and quickly. Moving onward, once CEF Block 1 is completed, there will be an Upstate CNI CEF Block 2 that will be limited to SSFA projects. As noted in the operating plan and in a previous slide, that block will be primarily funded via the $150 million approved by the Public Service Commission, and again, will be limited to only projects participating in SSFA, not ICSA. Moving a little more broadly, we are in the process of implementing that should be $249 million grant, not a $249 grant from the Environmental Protection Agency for the Solar for All program, the federal Solar for All program. This implementation is still very active and moving forward at this time, and will provide funding for additional capacity on top of everything that's been discussed today for residential, multifamily, and community solar projects serving low-income households. And then finally, as you've heard a few times on this presentation, including from Luke Forster, the residential and retail energy storage incentive blocks are now open, both for standalone energy storage and for energy storage that is paired with solar. So with that, I will close the presentation part of the webinar. We're going to go on mute for just a few minutes to review some of the questions that have come in. And then we will be back to answer as many of them as we can. I will note that we likely won't be able to get to all the questions, but don't worry, we are taking them all in. We will try to answer them either individually or roll them into a frequently asked question doc or otherwise address them. Then finally, I'll just say again, this has all been recorded. This will all be posted on the contractor resources page and emails sent out reminding people of where to find it. Thank you.
I can take a crack at some of these questions while Max is catching his breath. I mentioned earlier that there will be some additional capacity in a Con Ed non-residential block. The question is, when will that be announced? What will the incentive rate be? How many megawatts? We're going to have to wait and see. That'll depend on market conditions and budget constraints. Do we know what the next upstate residential block rate will be? That's residential block 14, open for National Grid, NYSEG and RG&E. That'll be 15 cents a watt, same as the current block 13. Is NYSERDA changing the application requirements and milestone requirements for the upstate C&I CEF blocks? Nope, they're going to be the same as they have been for the C&I megawatt block structure. That is, we're looking for the 25% utility upgrade payment plus local planning and zoning permit approvals. The recording will be shared. Will there be any updates to the statewide solar for all discount levels, which are currently 13 to 14%, depending on utility? Not immediately. NYSERDA does need to file an updated SSFA discount schedule. I believe it's the end of November. We will do it then. We also have the ability to update those rates if there's a radical change in market conditions.
Luke, I can jump in on a few. Thanks for taking the first round. There were some general questions about CEF funding. I can just kick those off. So the CEF stands for Solar Energy Equity Framework. We use it as shorthanded as the package of incentives and adders for projects serving disadvantaged communities, low and moderate income households, and affordable housing. So that includes the residential affordable solar incentive for 1 to 4 family homeowners. It includes our multifamily affordable housing incentive for regulated affordable housing, and it includes the inclusive community solar adder and statewide solar for all adders that we've discussed a little bit more today. Some specific questions that have come in about that. Will the residential affordable incentive be available on Long Island? Yes, it is already available and up and running. I'll just note that the funding for that Long Island incentive, and this goes for the Long Island funding for the multifamily affordable housing incentive as well, is funded through the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, or RGGI. That's a bit of a separate process than our sort of regular New York Sun funding process. So that is available, but the kind of details I provided here about the timing of the incentives going forward may not fully apply to the Long Island programs, but the short answer is yes, they are fully available in Long Island, as well as upstate. The multifamily affordable housing incentive is already and has been for some years available upstate, and will continue to be as described. There was a question for some more details about how the funding is being split between SSFA and ICSA projects per the order. So there's a lot more detail on this in the New York Sun operating plan. The order and the operating plan are really the places to look for this detail. But it is, as identified there, the new SSFA only blocks where the $150 million in approved a new use of the surplus budget. The remaining New York Sun budget outside of that portion of the surplus will be funding the other continued SEAF projects as described here. There was two very specific questions about the SSFA that I'll try to address. One person noted that there was a enrollment deadline for projects that had previously received a megawatt block to enroll in SSFA by March 31st, 2025. The question asked if the webinar today changes this. So, two notes. One is in the webinar, I tried to emphasize that the ICSA can still be applied for by pipeline projects. However, it is also the case, and we'll be addressing this specifically in email updates, that there was a slight error in the NYSERDA program manual as relates to projects that are in our pipeline that did not receive the community adder or ITC or MTC or community credit. That is a small subset of projects. However, those projects do continue to be eligible for SSFA. And thank you to the project owner that pointed out that discrepancy to us. We are working with DPS to make that update, and we'll reach out to project developers that have projects where that was a little unclear, the eligibility there. So the other quite specific SSFA question was about the treatment of SSFA projects that receive the federal bonus tax credit for, I think this is specifically about category 4 of the low-income communities bonus credit that provides a higher investment tax credit for projects that serve low-income households. So that is another area where the program rules will continue to be the same as they currently are for SSFA. Specifically, the New York Sun incentive, including the SSFA adder, does not change if a project receives the federal ITC adder. However, the change is made to the compensation that the project receives from the utility and on an ongoing basis. So again, people can refer to the contractor resources page. There's a dedicated statewide solar for all section. That includes a breakdown, at least for the current year, of the different compensation rates for projects that do not receive any bonus federal tax credits, or specifically do not receive the category 4 low-income communities bonus tax credit. And those that do, it is a different compensation rate. the compensation rate for those projects that do receive the bonus tax credit is set so that greater than 20% is distributed to the low-income households. So I'm going to pause for just another minute after saying all of that, and then I will hand it over to Sarah to address some other questions that came in.
Hello, everybody. So yeah, I'm just going to address some of the CEIF specific questions that have come in. We had a question about what are the qualifications for CEIF, Con Ed, and Upstate if you qualify for HEAP, SNAP, or federal programs. So for the residential rooftop solar program, which I think this is what this is referring to, the affordable solar program, there are several methods to verify income. I think there's two parts to this question, which is probably what's the income standard and then what are the verification methods. The income is 80% area median income or state median income. We'll take either one, whichever is higher. There are several ways that a household can qualify. HEAP and SNAP are two examples. Household can also submit our income verification application that is available to residents, and that is on the New York Sun website. But just to reiterate what Max and Luke have said already on this call, there is no changes to the actual program requirements. So it's the same requirements for the residential customer that already exist for a sort of affordable solar. We're not changing them. So that is the answer to that question. Bear with me. Yep, there was a question about income thresholds for participation in the residential box. So I think I answered that question right now. Someone asked, what are the minimum ICSA requirements that need to be met before a first invoice is fulfilled? So our minimum requirement is that a minimum of 40% of the project capacity must be filled with ICSA eligible subscribers. That project capacity, that's ICSA subscribers, half of those customers have to be residential subscribers. So again, this is the same as the current requirements in the for the program. So that is in the program manual. So please review the program manual just to see kind of the specific minimum requirements. See, Max, I might hand it back to you, or Luke, do you want to take some?
Yeah, let me jump in. Will the CEIF blocks be allocated on a first come, first served basis? Yes, the same way that the megawatt block structure has always been run. We will have at least 2 upstate CNI CEIF blocks, 400 megawatts each. If the first one fills up, we will then go into the second one. Do we have a specific date lined up in September for reopening the CNI program? Exact date to be determined. We'll send out a stakeholder email when we have additional details. How long will the CEIF blocks last? That's entirely a factor of how quickly project applications are submitted. Is the Upstate CNI CEIF block number 2 expected to have a lower incentive rate than block 1? That's also to be determined. It may depend on what federal policy is looking like and what other market and policy conditions are looking like at that point in time. Confirming, yes, the affordable solar residential incentive is available 80 cents a watt in upstate New York, and in Con Edison territory, 40 cents a watt in Long Island, has been open for some time at those incentive rates. Again, customers do need to be income eligible to qualify. There's a question if we have clarity into the updated statewide solar for all discount levels and how they might change 1 year after the next. The guidance NYSERDA has in that order from the Public Service Commission is to evaluate current market conditions and to come up with a discount rate based on that. So those rates could conceivably go up, go down, stay the same. Hard to tell what that'll look like in 5 years. In the CEIF blocks, those truly are incentive blocks for projects serving low to moderate income or disadvantaged community customers. That incentive money, cannot go to behind the meter projects for non-LMI customers. Max, I'll pass back to you if you have a few questions lined up.
Thanks, Luke. Okay, so there was a question about whether there was any plan for an adder for agrivoltaics. So the April 2025 Public Service Commission order did address the topic, so certainly encourage folks to look back at that. But in short, NYSERDA to implement an agrivoltaics adder, would need to and has the option of submitting a petition to the Public Service Commission that would be subject to public comment and go through a full review in that way. Now, any agrivoltaics adder would be also only available to projects that are pursuing the SSFA or ICSA for upstate commercial industrial scale projects. So at this time, NYSERDA doesn't have any timeline or really decision on whether we would pursue developing a petition for an agrivoltaics adder. And we are assessing whether that would be feasible given the current budget of the program and the timelines that we expect projects to be developed. So just we had a couple of clarifying questions. So just to clarify, the SSFA incentive adder is one of the SEIF incentives. The potential SEIF incentives a project can have, and it can only have one, is the SSFA adder for a statewide solar for all project, the inclusive community solar adder for an opt-in community solar project that meets those requirements. For multifamily affordable housing, there's the multifamily affordable housing incentive, and then there's the affordable solar residential incentive for homeowners. But as we've described, a new upstate CNI project can secure capacity within SEIF Block 1, receive the prevailing wage adder, any siting adders they may be eligible for, and either the SSFA adder or the ICSA, the inclusive community solar adder, and indeed must seek and receive and meet the requirements of one of those two. There's a question about the specific affordable solar residential incentive level in New York City. Yes, it is currently 80 cents a watt for the total incentive. That is live and available now. There's a question about incentive adjustments, a more general question about incentive. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm misreading this. Yes, the SSFA adder. So projects receiving either the SSFA adder or the ICSA that are new project applications will take capacity from that 400 megawatts in SEIF block, CNI SEIF block 1. However, again, pipeline projects that currently have a megawatt block incentive, they are still eligible in the scenarios I described to submit applications for ICSA or SSFA without drawing down that incentive, that capacity. On that note, question about when do we anticipate the next round of SSFA enrollments? I believe Luke spoke to this generally, but SSFA is open enrollment. A project can enroll right now with the utility. And indeed, if you have a project that is at that 25% utility upgrade deposit milestone, your project has the opportunity to enroll, and having already enrolled in the program with the utility is a requirement to secure the SSFA adder currently and under the new block. And there, there were a couple questions about the SSFA enrollment process. So that is an area where we have within the contractor resources page, a SSFA section that includes a lot of detail there. Each utility also has details in their portal. But in brief, the enrollment process first happens through the utility. You'll enroll the project with the utility in SSFA. You will then have a participation agreement for your project with the utility. That is the documentation you would upload in your New York Sun application to demonstrate that, yes, your project is doing SSFA and eligible for the adder. There was a question just about the process for, those projects currently in the New York Sun pipeline that have megawatt block incentives for changing their application to opt into, I guess, either ICSFA or we're eligible SSFA. We do have some information in the program manual and contractor resources on those particular application steps. So please, I encourage you to reach out directly to the New York Sun program team to adjust your application. And also, as noted, we'll be providing some more details specifically for those SSFA projects, or rather those New York Sun projects that received the 5 cent a watt final CNI Block 21 incentive, but did not receive the community adder or ICSA. Some questions about, again, timing. We are looking at September implementation for all of this. There's a question about a planned CNI project that has an executed PPA in place, whether or not they'd be eligible for incentives. I'm taking that to mean a planned project that already has an executed PPA with, say, a single large commercial off-taker remote crediting project. So asking if a project like that would be eligible for any new incentives. The answer is no, that project would not be eligible. And that's, very clear and ironclad in the PSC order. So not an area where we have any flexibility. So just a question about projects that might have a current megawatt block incentive, but might be interested in terminating their existing megawatt block incentive and applying to participate in the new CNI CEF block. Well, I guess first I'd underscore that I don't think there's a way to really change or increase your incentive or have any other benefit by doing so. So we, if the person who asked this question can reach out, we can talk about specific project scenarios. But also our sort of general long-standing rule is that, unless there's sort of a specific, retroactive opt-in path laid out in, our operating plan and the relevant order and our program manual, projects can't cancel old incentives to get kind of higher new incentives. So that's generally the case, but, please reach out with your specific question. We received some questions about EPA Solar for All funding. So again, that's distinct from statewide Solar for All. It is the separate federal funding that we have received from the Environmental Protection Agency. Because that's not the main topic of this webinar, I know I've been saying this a lot, but check out the contractor resources page. There is an EPA Solar for All area there that includes a PDF of our work plan that I think addresses a lot of the questions that are being asked for here. I'm going to pause or actually hand it over to Sarah for the next set of questions.
Hi, everybody. So we got a question. Sorry, I'm just getting organized here. We got quite a few questions just for more details on those ICSA application and awarding kind of streamlining plans that we have. So, I think the most detail that I can share with you is what I shared with you on the webinar, but we are on track to be able to release kind of our ideas in the fall, hopefully the early fall. If you have some ideas, just feel free to email us directly through communitysolar@nyserda.ny.gov. And, our plan is to release the feedback, or to release the plan. And, similar to how we've done updates to the ICSA in the past, just give folks an opportunity to give us stakeholder feedback on those edits. Do you want to just keep going, Max? Yeah.
Yes, well, I'm going to note that it's 4 o'clock, or a little past 4. And there are still some great questions coming in. A lot of them are repeats. So we will, go through everything and follow up. Just in closing, because we've gotten some sort of repeat questions here. The currently open megawatt blocks, Con Ed non-residential, Upstate non-residential, those are still open, functioning as normal, eligible for all adders. Nothing in the order operating plan changed that the existing approved New York Sun plan capacity. So what we've talked about here today and what will be released shortly is additional capacity available for areas where that megawatt block capacity has been closed due to the successful implementation of the program. The timeline once again is September for the Upstate CNI CEF Block 1. The Con Ed residential CEF Block 1 is already open and accepting applications. And then finally, once again, this has been recorded. It will be posted, and we will be following up on questions as well. In closing, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today and for everything that all of you have done to make such a successful solar industry and community solar market and residential solar market and commercial solar market in New York State. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.